Hello and welcome to part one of two videos on the endocrine system. In this video, we will start by looking at the different classes of chemical signals we find in animals. We will define hormones, and we will look at the different types of hormones that we find in animals. We will look at the mode of action that by which hormones act on the body, and then we will finish by looking at the different effects that hormones have on different parts of the body. So let's start by looking at the different classes of chemical signaling molecules that we find in animals. The first class is autocrine molecules. These molecules are produced by certain types of cells known as autocrine cells that release them, and they act on the same cells that release them. Examples of such molecules are found in immune cells. The second type or second class of molecules are the paracrine molecules. These molecules are released by cells to act on cells in the direct vicinity of the cells that release them. Again, the immune system is known to have paracrine cells that act this way. The third type are the hormones, also known as endocrine signals. These are produced by specialized cells of the endocrine system, and hormones are released directly into the blood, and they travel a long distance within the body to act on target cells. The fourth type are neural signals, or better known as neurotransmitters. Those are released by neurons, as we have seen earlier, and they are used in order for neurons to communicate with each other. The fifth classes of chemical signaling molecules are the neuroendocrine molecules. These are hormones that are produced by the nervous system, by neurons, and therefore these molecules are released from nerve cells, from axon terminals directly into the blood, and they act in the same way as hormones. And then the last one are the pheromones. Pheromones are molecules that are released by an individual animal into its environment to act on other individuals in its vicinity. And these molecules are produced in order for animals to communicate with each other. Let's look now at classes of hormones. So again, a hormone is a signaling molecule that is produced by an endocrine cell and is released into the circulation, into the blood, to act on a distant target cells, causing a change in that target cell. There are different kinds of hormones that we find in the body, and they can be categorized under three broad categories. The first one is that of the peptide or the protein hormones, and they come in different forms and in different shapes and different sizes. These hormones, because they are big, large molecules, cannot cross the membrane, so therefore you would find their receptors on the membrane of the cell. An example of protein hormones is that of insulin, which is a polypeptide, and it acts on surface receptors, membrane receptors. The second class of hormones is those molecules that are derived from amino acids. These are smaller molecules, and most of them are polar enough for the membrane to be permeable to them. So therefore, they would have their receptors on the cell surface. An example of an amino acid derived hormone is adrenaline, also known as epinephrine. And the third class of hormones is that of hormone steroids. These are derived from cholesterol, and almost all of them are highly nonpolar, so therefore you would find their receptors inside the cytoplasm. An example of steroid hormones is cortisol, as well as the sex hormones testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. Hormones act on cells by causing a wide variety of responses. We can categorize these responses under 5 broad effects or modes of action. The first one is alteration of the permeability of the plasma membrane. An example of such mode of action is that of insulin. When it binds to its membrane receptor, it's going to cause a change inside the cell that would result in the production of glucose transporters and their insertion into the membrane of the target cells. Their insertion there would cause the membrane to become more permeable to glucose, and therefore allowing the absorption of glucose from the extracellular fluid into these cells. Another mode of action exerted by hormones is the stimulation of gene expression. Certain hormones, like, for example, the steroid hormones, they act on cytoplasmic receptors that would bind to DNA and therefore activating the transcription of certain genes, resulting in the upregulation of gene expression. A third mode of action of hormones is the activation or deactivation of enzyme systems. A good example of this mode of action is that of glucagon and adrenaline. Both hormones can act on different target cells, including, for example, the liver cells, where they cause the activation of enzyme systems that would result in the hydrolysis of glycogen and therefore the release of glucose from its site of storage into the blood. A fourth mode of action of hormones is the stimulation of the secretion of certain products by cells. These hormones, they act by causing the endomembrane system to become active and to result in the secretion of, for example, certain hormones as depicted here in the picture. And then the last mode of action of hormones is the stimulation and the activation of cell division. Some hormones act as cytokines, meaning that they cause the cells to start dividing by mitosis by activating the mitotic machinery of the target cells. At the organismal level, hormones regulate metabolic activities essential for, first, maintaining homeostasis in the body. Second, for preparing the body to respond to changes in its internal and external environment. And third, in regulating growth and development of the body as well as reproduction. Let's start by looking at hormonal control of homeostasis. There are different hormones involved in the maintenance of homeostasis in the body, and we are going to look at the most important hormones in the human body, starting with the antidiuretic hormone, or better known as ADH. ADH is produced by the hypothalamus and released from the pituitary gland, and it acts on the kidneys in order to reabsorb water back into the blood. So the main role of ADH is to conserve water in the body. A second example is erythropoietin, which is produced by the kidneys, and its role is to regulate and maintain the level of oxygen in the blood by causing a proliferation of the formation of red blood cells. Insulin and glucagon are two hormones that are antagonistic to each other, and their role is to maintain the level of glucose in the blood. Another system is that of aldosterone, which is produced by the adrenal gland, and its function is to maintain the levels of sodium ions in extracellular fluids and the blood. And then the last example that we are going to give on the role of hormones in the maintenance of homeostasis is that of the parathyroid hormone and calcitriol, or known as vitamin D. Both of them are involved in maintaining the level of calcium ions in the blood. Hormones are also responsible for coordinating responses of the body to changes that could cause stress on the body. and that stress could be short-term or long-term. Let's first look at the short-term response to stress and how the endocrine system is involved in that response. The main hormone involved in short-term response to stress is epinephrine, or also known as adrenaline, and it's responsible for the fight or flight response of the body. Let's take the example of a person who is camping in the woods, and that person encounters a bear. The effect of this stressful condition would cause the nervous system to stimulate the adrenal gland to release copious large amounts of epinephrine into the body, and epinephrine would have a wide systemic effect on different organs in the body. Mainly, epinephrine would cause an increase in pulse rate, increase in blood pressure, and increase in oxygen consumption by the brain and the muscles. Epinephrine would also cause a vasoconstriction and vasodilation of different blood vessels in the body in order to direct blood to the brain and to muscles for preparing the body to fight or to flee. And the last one is epinephrine acting on the liver to cause the release of glucose from its site of storage so that it becomes available as a source of energy for the brain and for muscles. When it comes to long-term response to stress, the adrenal gland as well is involved in that process, and it does so by releasing a type of glucocorticoids known as cortisol. Cortisol is involved in ensuring that fuel, in terms of energy, like glucose, is made available to cells over a long period of time, and it does so by maintaining glucose production. So in addition to providing cells with glucose, it's going to cause the production of glucose to increase by our body. Glucose can be made by our body through a process known as gluconeogenesis, and in this process amino acids are used in order to produce glucose. Cortisol also will cause an induce in resistance to insulin by adipocytes or fat cells and liver cells, so that these cells would not store glucose but make it available to other cells so that they can have access to energy when it's needed. Prolonged effects of cortisol can have adverse effects on the body, such as loss of muscle mass, and this is mainly due to the fact that cortisol stimulates gluconeogenesis, the production of glucose from amino acids. And amino acids, the source of amino acids in the body would come from proteins. Therefore, a prolonged effect of cortisol would be loss of protein mass. A second effect of prolonged exposure to cortisol is suppression of the immune system. And this is the reason why people who are under chronic stress are more prone to infectious diseases. Hormones also regulate growth and development of the organism. And here we have two important hormones that promote growth in the body. The first one is growth hormone, which is produced by the pituitary, and growth hormone is a protein hormone that acts on different kinds of organs in the body and promotes the growth of tissues within these organs. The second hormone that is involved in development is thyroxine, or thyroid hormone, which is produced by the thyroid gland, and the effect of this hormone is a generalized one. It acts on different kinds of cells in the body by activating or by increasing the metabolic rate of these cells. Other hormones involved in growth and development are sex hormones, in addition to controlling activities in reproductive organs, these hormones are also involved in growth and development of different parts of the body, such as bones and muscles. And the sex hormones that I'm referring to are testosterone in males and estrogen and progesterone in females. And with this, I conclude the first part on the endocrine system.